The folder landed on the dining room table with a sound like a verdict. Petra Voss Calloway, 38 years old, Chief Financial Officer of Mercer Crownwell Group, did not flinch. He simply looked across the table at his wife and said, "Explain this." Linnea Voss, 36-year-old Director of the Callaway Reach Foundation and wife of Petra. No, wait. The names needed to be right. Harlow Steen, 36 years old, sat very still at the dining room table of the house she had helped build from nothing. The folder her husband had thrown landed 2 inches from her water glass. She looked at it. She did not pick it up. Kieran Steen, 41-year-old Chief Financial Officer of Steen Vantage Group and husband of Harlow, stood at the other end of the table. He was still in his suit jacket. He hadn't even taken it off when he came in. That told her everything. "The board is meeting tomorrow morning," he said, "and I need to know, right now, where the foundation's reserve accounts went." Harlow set down her fork. The dinner she had cooked, roasted chicken with rosemary, his favorite, sat untouched between them. "The reserve accounts are exactly where they've always been," she said. "Audited, filed, disclosed." "Then explain why Vantage's external auditors are flagging a gap between the foundation's reported operating expenses and what they're actually seeing in the consolidated statements." She looked at him for a long moment. "Because your auditors are looking at the wrong statements," she said. "The foundation files separately. We always have. That's not a gap, Kieran. That's a filing structure." He shook his head. He picked the folder back up. He took his jacket and his briefcase and walked out of the dining room without finishing his sentence. Harlow sat alone at the table. The candle she had lit for no particular reason burned down to nothing by the time she moved. She had been married to Kieran Steen for 9 years. She had been running the Callaway Reach Foundation for 6. In those 6 years, she had turned a $400,000 annual grant program into a $12 million community development operation, covering affordable housing, rural healthcare access, and education funding across 3 provinces. She had done this without a publicist, without a capital campaign, without a single gala invitation. She had done it quietly. That was how she worked. What Kieran knew about her work could have fit on one side of a business card. What he did not know would have filled a filing cabinet. 3 weeks before the folder landed on the table, Harlow had been in her office at the foundation when her assistant, a young woman named Bex, had knocked and said there was someone from Vantage's Treasury Division asking to see the Q3 payroll summaries. "Did they say which department?" Harlow asked. "Executive Liaison," Bex said. "They said it was routine." It was not routine. Executive Liaison at Vantage reported directly to Kieran. They did not make routine visits to the foundation's offices. The foundation and Vantage Group operated under the same parent holding structure, but they filed independently. There was no procedural reason for Kieran's office to be auditing her payroll summaries. She told Bex to give them the standard public disclosure package and let her know when they left. Then she picked up the phone and called Martin Osei, the foundation's legal counsel. "Someone from Kieran's division just asked for our payroll records," she said. "Not the summary report, the actual Q3 summaries." Martin was quiet for a moment. "Did they have a written request?" "No, then they have no authority to ask." "I know that," she said. "I want to know why they're asking." Martin told her to document the visit and not hand over anything that wasn't part of the standard public disclosure she already had. She thanked him and hung up. She sat at her desk for a while after that, thinking. Kieran had never shown much interest in the foundation's operations. He had always treated it as something separate from Vantage, a charitable arm, a community relations asset, a tax structure. He came to the annual dinner. He shook hands. He gave a small speech about community investment. Then he went back to running Vantage's financial division and left her to her work. The visit from his liaison was not routine, and the timing, 3 weeks before the Q4 board presentation, was not an accident. She opened her laptop and started going through the consolidated statements herself. She found the first problem in 40 minutes. It was small. A vendor payment, flagged as foundation operating expense, routed through a holding account she did not recognize, $47,000. The vendor name resolved to a numbered company registered in Ontario with no public-facing operations, no website, no directory listing. She printed the statement. She opened the next quarter. She found another one. By the time Bex came in to say goodnight, Harlow had found 6 separate payments over 18 months, totaling just over $340,000, all routed through the same numbered company, all categorized as foundation operating expenses, none of which had been approved through the foundation's standard procurement process. She did not call Kieran. She called Martin Osei. "I need you to run a corporate registry search on a numbered company," she said. Tonight, she said. The numbered company, Martin found out the next morning, had a single registered director, Sable Drummond, 34, listed as a freelance financial consultant. No other public filings. Harlow recognized the name. She had seen it once, 18 months ago, on a guest list for a Vantage Group investor dinner. She had not attended. She had a foundation site visit that day. She remembered Kieran mentioning the name offhandedly, a consultant they were bringing in for a short-term project. She set the printout on her desk and looked at it for a long time. Then she called Martin back and asked him to find out everything the corporate registry had on Sable Drummond. She did not tell Kieran what she had found. She came home, made dinner, asked about his day, listened while he talked about the Q4 projections, and said nothing. This was not deception. This was caution. She had been careful her whole adult life. She had learned it early from a grandmother who had built a small textile business in Winnipeg over 40 years and lost it in 6 months when she trusted the wrong partner. Her grandmother had told her once, "Never hand someone a reason to move against you before you understand what they're trying to take." Harlow had never forgotten that. She spent the next 2 weeks collecting documentation. Martin helped. She also brought in a forensic accountant, a woman named Dorth, who had done similar work for a healthcare trust Harlow knew, and had Dorth go through every consolidated statement for the past 3 years. Dorth found more. The $340,000 in misdirected vendor payments was the surface. Underneath it was a more complex structure, foundation operating funds that had been reallocated through internal journal entries, reclassified as executive-level administrative expenses, and then partially redirected into Vantage's discretionary capital account. An account that Kieran controlled directly and that was not subject to the same board-level scrutiny as Vantage's primary operating funds. "How much in total?" Harlow asked. Dorth set a single sheet on the table. "Just over $1 million too," she said. "Over 3 years." Harlow looked at the sheet. She set it face down. "Can you prove the journal entries were authorized?" "Some of them," Dorth said. "The authorization signatures on the reclassification orders are the same initials. Kieran Steen." Harlow thanked Dorth, asked her to prepare a full report, and went home and made dinner again. The folder landed on the table on a Tuesday evening. She understood now why Kieran had come home with it. The external auditors had found the gap between the foundation's reported numbers and the consolidated statements, but they had found it from the wrong direction. They were treating the discrepancy as the foundation's error, as hers. "The board is meeting tomorrow morning," Kieran said. She had not picked up the folder. She already knew what was in it. "I'll be there," she said. He looked at her. "I think it would be better if you weren't," he said carefully. "Let me handle the preliminary questions. We can issue a corrective filing and keep the foundation's reputation intact. No need to make this bigger than it is." She looked at him for a long moment. "No need to make this bigger than it is." That was the sentence. That was the one she would think about later. "I'll be there," she said again. "I'm the director." He left the room without answering. The board met at 9 the following morning in the 23rd floor conference room of Vantage's downtown Toronto office. 12 people around a glass table. Harlow arrived at 8:55 with Martin Osei and a printed copy of Dorth's forensic accounting report, bound and tabbed. Kieran was already there. So was Sable Drummond. Harlow had not known Sable Drummond would be in the room. She had seen her photo in the corporate registry documents. Early 30s, professional headshot, careful smile. The woman sitting 2 seats from Kieran matched it exactly. Harlow set her folder on the table and sat down. The board chair, an older man named Frederick, who had been with Vantage since its founding, called the meeting to order. He explained that the agenda had been amended to include a review of the Foundation's Q3 and Q4 financial statements in light of concerns raised by the external auditors. He looked at Harlow. "Harlow, perhaps you could start by walking us through the Foundation's position." "I'd be glad to," she said. She opened the bound report. She walked them through it. She did not rush. She pointed to the vendor payments, the numbered company, the journal entries, the reclassification orders. She pointed to the authorization signatures. She pointed to the dates. The room was very quiet. Frederick said, "These initials." "Kieran Steen," Harlow said. "Yes." Kieran was on his feet before she finished the sentence. "That is a misrepresentation of the authorization process," he said. "Those reclassifications were standard administrative entries, approved through a delegated authority framework. There is no delegated authority framework that permits Foundation operating funds to be reclassified into Vantage's executive discretionary account without board approval." Martin said from the chair beside Harlow. "That's in the Foundation's founding documents. Section 14, paragraph 3. Sable Drummond said nothing. She was looking at the table. Frederick asked for a recess. In the hallway, Kieran found Harlow and told her she was making a catastrophic mistake, that she didn't understand the full picture, that he had been protecting the Foundation's capital structure from a policy change that would have gutted the Q4 operating budget. The numbered company, she said quietly. The one registered to Sable Drummond. What was it consulting on? He stopped. Because in 3 years of payments, she said, I can't find a single deliverable. Not a report, not a recommendation, not a meeting summary. I can't find any project that the company was engaged to support. What I can find is a series of transfers that moved foundation money through that company and into an account I don't have signing authority over. His expression shifted. It was very small. She almost missed it. That is not what happened, he said. Then explain it to the board, she said. I'd like to hear the explanation. She walked back into the conference room. The meeting lasted 4 hours. By the end of it, Frederick had asked Karen and Sable Drummond to step out, while the board conferred privately with Harlow and Martin. The external auditors were called back in. Dorth's report was reviewed page by page. At one point, a board member named Joanna asked whether the foundation itself had knowingly participated in the misdirection of funds. No, Martin said. The foundation's accounts were used as a conduit. The director was not involved in authorizing any of the reclassifications. How can we verify that? Joanna asked. Martin opened a second folder. Because the foundation has a dual authorization requirement for any transaction over $25,000, he said. Every legitimate foundation payment in this period has 2 signatures. Every misdirected payment has 1. KS. Joanna looked at the signature lines for a long time, then she looked at Harlow. Harlow met her eyes and said nothing. They suspended Kieran's signing authority by the end of the day. An independent review was commissioned. Sable Drummond's consulting contract, a contract Harlow had never seen and had not been consulted on, was terminated. Harlow drove home alone. She sat in the parking garage of their building for a while before she went up. She was not crying. She was doing something quieter than that. She was deciding what the next thing was. In 9 years of marriage, she had co-signed the mortgage on their Rosedale home. She had helped Kieran through 2 rounds of Vantage restructuring, sitting at the kitchen table with him past midnight while he worked through the numbers, making coffee, asking questions, listening. She had turned down a senior position at a national charitable trust to stay in Toronto when he was up for the CFO role because he'd said he needed her close during the transition. She had believed that she was building something alongside him. She understood now that she had been building it mostly for him. 2 weeks after the board meeting, Harlow received a letter from a law firm she did not recognize. The return address was a building in Calgary she had never been to. The letter was from an estate trustee. It concerned the estate of Marguerite Lacrostine, who had died 14 months earlier. Harlow had met Marguerite exactly once, at a fundraising conference in Ottawa 7 years ago. She was a small woman in her 70s, with a precise speaking style and a habit of asking questions that cut directly to the center of a thing. She had asked Harlow 3 questions about the Foundation's land trust program, and at the end said, "You understand what this kind of work is actually for. That's rare." Harlow had not known Marguerite was connected to Vantage Group. She had not known Marguerite was Kieran's maternal great-aunt, estranged from the family for reasons that predated Harlow's arrival. She had not known any of this. What the letter told her was this. Marguerite Lacrostine had held a controlling interest in a private holding company, the Lacroix Bridge Trust, which held a 41% ownership stake in the original Vantage Group parent entity, predating the current corporate structure by 30 years. Upon her death, with no surviving direct heirs, the trust had passed to the individual she had designated as successor trustee in a sealed instruction filed 8 years ago. While the letter noted, approximately 3 months after a fundraising conference in Ottawa, the individual she had designated was Harlow. The trust's assets, as of the most recent valuation, stood at approximately $2.4 billion. Harlow read the letter twice. Then she set it on the kitchen table and called Martin Osei. "Martin," she said, "I need you to come over, and I need you to bring someone who understands trust law." He came. He brought 2 colleagues. They sat at the kitchen table, the same table where the folder had landed 3 weeks ago, and went through the letter line by line. "This is real," Martin said at the end. "I know," Harlow said. "Do you understand what this means for the independent review?" "It means," she said, "that I have standing to request a full forensic audit of the parent holding structure, not just the foundation ounce. Everything." Martin looked at her over the top of his reading glasses. "That would unwind Vantage's entire executive discretionary framework." "Yes," she said, "it would." Kieran came home that evening from what he said was a meeting with his personal legal counsel. He looked tired. He set his briefcase down by the door. "The board has asked me to take a voluntary leave during the review period," he said. "I wanted you to hear it from me." "I already know," she said. He looked at her. "Frederick called you?" "No," she said. "I requested the leave." The silence in the kitchen was different from other silences. It had a weight to it. "You requested," he started. I'm a trustee of the Lacroix Bridge Trust, she said. Marguerite designated me 8 years ago. I received formal notification 2 days ago. She set the letter on the counter. The trust holds a 41% stake in Vantage's parent entity. That gives me standing with the board that supersedes your CFO authority. He looked at the letter. He did not pick it up. Harlow? The full forensic audit has been authorized, she said. Not just the foundation accounts, the executive discretionary fund, the vendor payment structure, all of it. It will take approximately 4 months. You don't understand what you're doing, he said. His voice had gone very quiet. This company, everything we have, it depends on Vantage's stability. If you pull on this thread, you pulled on this thread, she said. When you authorized the first reclassification, when you created the vendor arrangement, when you sent your liaison to my office to ask for payroll records that they had no right to see. She looked at him steadily. I didn't start this. He said nothing. The house will need to be addressed through the separation process, she said. Martin's office will reach out to your counsel by end of week. He stood in the kitchen for a long moment. He looked like a man who had made calculations over a long period of time and found that every one of them had been wrong. Then he picked up his briefcase and went into the other room. The audit took 5 months, not 4. It was thorough. It was not comfortable for anyone. What it found, beyond the $1.2 million in misdirected foundation funds, was a pattern of discretionary account usage that had been running for just over 4 years. Vendor arrangements, short-term consulting payment, and a series of travel and accommodation expenses that did not correspond to any documented Vantage activity. Expenses corresponded, in date and location, with a set of personal calendar entries that Sable Drummond had filed as part of a parallel civil proceeding. The board accepted the audit findings in full. Kieran Steen resigned from Vantage Group in the 3rd month of the audit, before the final report was issued. Harlow did not attend his resignation. She was in Saskatoon that week, at a site visit for a new foundation project, an affordable housing pilot that she had been quietly developing for 2 years, waiting for the capital structure to align. With the trust formalized and her standing clarified, the capital structure had aligned. She stood on an empty lot in the North End on a Tuesday morning in early October, with the project lead and 2 city planners, and looked at the space where the first building would go. How many units? She asked. 48 to start, the project lead said. We can phase to 80 if the pilot data supports it. It will, she said. She didn't say this out of wishful thinking. She said it because she had been watching the data for 2 years and she knew what it showed. The project lead smiled. You sound pretty sure about that. I am, she said. She took out her phone and photographed the lot. The empty ground, the October sky, the yellow survey stakes at the corners. She would not post it anywhere. She kept a project file for each foundation initiative, a private folder of images taken at the beginning before anything was built. She liked having a record of what the space looked like before it became something. She had started keeping those files 6 years ago when she took over the foundation. She had 43 of them now. She put her phone away and looked at the lot for another minute. Then she walked back to the car and drove to her next meeting and kept going.